golfers on golfing trips to Mudgee, and recently we gave away Mudgee and we went to Port Macquarie, and that's been really good over the years. Lloyd came along and put a bit of fun into the place, letting off bungers on the 15th of Mudgee. Recently, we had a good time at Port Macquarie with Lloyd. I came this morning with a walking stick and a bell on it, and that was one of the things that Lloyd did in Mudgee. He got dressed up, we all went up to the pub for tea. He followed later, and we heard this bell ringing coming through the bar. Had his sunglasses on, walking stick, ringing the bell, and we didn't know what the hell was going on. Looked around and it was Lloyd, up to his old pranks. So after tea, we all sat down, we watched the footy, and we looked around and Lloyd had gone. Geez, where's Lloyd gone? So we didn't know. He said, oh, we must have gone back to the hotel where we were staying. So we all chuffed off, and we heard this bell ringing in the middle of Mudgee. And here's Lloyd sitting on the War Memorial at Mudgee ringing his bell. The only thing that he didn't have was a bucket to get some donations, but he's really brought some enjoyment to a lot of people's lives, and for that I thank you very much, Lloyd. I haven't known you that long, but there's a lot of people that have known you a long, long time, and I'm sure that they've got some enjoyment out of and had some great fun with you. Thank you very much, and happy birthday.
Thanks, Paul. There's a man with one eye somewhere and he's got an eye patch on. That's got a story too. I'd just like to make two little presentations. One is to my auntie Sarah, my auntie Teddy, a copy of our Yagon book, and she's mentioned in there, and her Uncle Ted, and a presentation to a person that's very, very overdue, because in 1984 our hut burnt down and we built another one, and we were doing all the wrong things, and the national parks were really getting stuck into us, and threats and all the rest of it. And the local solicitor, who was a friend through tennis and other times out at his place, George Williams, took our case up, and he fought and did everything possible legally he could to get our hut number 3 to stay there. And it went on. He got us face-to-face interviews with that gentleman called Bob Carr, and also delegations to Mr. Unsworth and all kinds of things. And George Williams, I'm just trying to find where your face is. George Williams, if you could come out here. Long overdue, I would say, from all the people that Tortilla Flat number 4, we mightn't have won, mate, but by geez, you gave us a great chance. Thank you, George.
I'd like to say that it was a great pleasure for me to do what I didn't get done, and that is to try and preserve Tortilla Flat. But we had a good try, and we flexed our muscles against the almighty government that we've got in this country, and we came off second best, but it was great doing it.
It was great, mate. But if you're in doubt, read page 31. George, you better have a look. Otherwise you're going to have to go out and tear them all out if you don't like it. Talk to him.
Do you want me to get rid of the umbrella?
I'm joking.
I can move it if it's in the way.
Relax for a minute, I'm not quite ready.
You haven't even got a camera in his hand.
I'm waiting for the freight train to come. Oh, nearly there. Well, I get a bit of this gear off.
Like the clouds, Lloyd. Like the purple. Sorry.
Hold it.
Anyone?
Stay there. Too far, too close. Look, folks, first of all, I'll introduce myself in case those who don't know me. My name's Mike, or Mick, or 40, or Mustang, Sweetheart, Margaret. I answer to all of them. But I'm here today for two reasons. Like you people, it's my cue card. One is, of course, to celebrate the birthday of Caliber's 70 years, which has been wonderful so far. But my purpose today is to launch, and I know what it means to launch a book, and I'm going to try, that he's written about a wonderful place called Yagon. And in order to do that, I've negotiated with 5 of his grandchildren who he adores. And I'd just like them to bring out the gear now, please. We've got Angus coming out here. The fishermen amongst you will recognise some of these. I think they're on the end down there.
That's a pen, isn't it, Lloyd? Yeah, the pen's on there. That's a pen.
Hey, good work, mate.
Where'd you get the muleys?
They're pilchards,
Yes,
they're not bloody
good work,
muleys.
mate.
Bloody muleys, that's a
You've
go.
got a good one on the end there.
That's a beaky.
There.
There you go. Good work.
There's a spitter.
Let fit
What?
down. Beautiful. Like a glove.
Artie, look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
Little Ella, sweetheart. And it goes.
That's a jag.
The Jack, no.
Now, what is this book about? Well, basically, it's about, and I'm sorry if there's an overlapping between what's already been said. I've been in there trying to get bloody garfish and pilchers on hooks. Had another backlash, Smithy.
And that bird.
That'd be right.
Anyway, the book's basically about 4 fishing huts, okay? 4 fishing huts. And we know that those huts were called Tortilla Flat, and there were 4 of them. And it's not only about the huts, of course, it's about the people who used those huts and visited those huts. Now, like,
How come you know about it when none of us have been allowed to look at it?
in case of who you know. Anyway, Tortilla Flat was the name given to the huts, of course, and basically the book is about huts and people who enjoyed it. Now, I've already overheard somebody say, how did it all begin? And I'm sorry if there's a bit of repetition, but bad luck, you're going to have to put up with that. But it did begin with 4 blokes. 3 of them are here today, and that's wonderful. One's not with us, but God bless him, he's here in spirit. Those blokes, and I'll use their nicknames, but you know them well, most of you. One was Sark. Okay, those who don't know who Sark is, Sark was Alan Fairhall. The other bloke was Tiny, also called Fred Frickenhauser, sometimes called the German. His real name, however, was Clinton Horn. Sitting right over here in the corner with a hat on.
Come on out. Come on down.
Oh, thank you, Dick. Now, the other one, of course, was Caliber's, and that's a story in its own. You might ask him sometime where the name came from, he'll tell you. But of course, we all know him as Lloyd, or Brian, or Mr. Crockett, or Grandpa, or whatever. And finally, oh, of course, Uncle Lloyd. And finally, we've got Mr. Wog. Now, Mr. Wog is quite easy to work out who that is, of course, sitting over here. Now, notice he's got the hat on that he often fished in many, many years ago. Of course, I'm referring to Bill Gow. Now, these four fellas, of course, over a game of billiards and so on in Facey sometime, had been fishing away together, 2 dairy farmers and 2 schoolies. And somebody, I don't know who it was, said, let's build a bloody hut at Yagon. And so they did. And so the episodes and the dynasty of the Yagon huts began with Tortilla Flat 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now, you might ask, where did the word tortilla come from? Now, you probably already know, but I'm going to tell you again anyway. Tortilla Flat took its name from a fellow who wrote a book, John Steinbeck, and it was called Tortilla Flat. And it was about 4 drunken bums who lived in a hut. Now, when you think about Sark, and you think about Tiny, you think about Mr. Wog, and you think about Calibers, how fitting it was and apt for that. The bloke who was credited with that, of course, was Herr Crouchenhauser, Ray Crouch, and he conned that name Tortilla Flat, and of course, we know how it goes from Tortilla Flat 1 right through to 4. In fact, it goes further than that, but that's another story again. So, we know that in 1963, the first hut was built in the Sandhills, and it was overcome by the Sandhills. We had to move. In 1973, the other hut was built, and of course, unfortunately, it was burnt by fire in 1984, and thank God no one was hurt in that particular episode. In 1984, it was rebuilt again. In fact, I remember Lloyd saying the National Park Road came around after it was burnt down, how quick the third one went up. He was amazed. And of course, finally, when the National Parks, Bobcar, when the National Parks came in, of course, they had to pull it down, but they were allowed to keep the bike shed for a while and become Tortilla Flat 4, and there were extensions to that, and then finally, of course, it was all bulldozed down in 1987. So there we have the names and the origin of the hut. Now, the book itself, which I'm holding, you'll notice is a peculiar name. It's called Yagon Cocktails. Now, we all know what Yagon is, but I'm not sure whether all of you know where the cocktails come from. And at this stage, if someone can get my little lefty, I'd like to just sort of there, love. Thank you. Gee, it's hard to get good. It's hard to get good help, isn't it?
Robbie, what's the top on that for?
Okay. I just line up a bit. Now, many of you may not know that guys go fishing, they often drink. I don't know why, but they do. And this story of the Yagon Cocktails, the selection of the title, of course, goes back to this particular cocktail. And it came from a good old friend of all the fishermen there, Paddy Coleman, Bill Longbottom, Collie Harris, I think it was. If you went past their hut on the way back to Yagon, they always called you in for a drink. Have a drink. Now that drink consisted of the following. First of all, we had your beer, okay? Now, what you had to do there, pardon me for a minute, I'll find the right one. To get the cocktail, the mixture done correctly, what you had to do was to put in 70% beer. Okay? 70% beer. Now, beer in those days weren't KB, of course. Sorry, getting too close to that. Beer in those days wasn't KB, it was either Dirty Annie or Kid DA or KB. KB. So, this is how it sort of went. You'd get a glass and you'd pour, allowing for the froth, of course. Yeah, it takes a while. Leave it at that for a minute, let that settle. So you put 70% beer in it. 70% beer, that's the one. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you'd follow that up with 15% plop. 15% block, okay? Get that chair tidy, you're not getting it. Okay. So you pour 15% block in there.
You ever thought of going around the shows, Mike?
I've got marks on this glass here. One for the rider. And then when you've done all that, by me, you've topped it up with 15% rum. Any kind of rum would have done, but usually bean leaf rum was used. So we top it up with a little bit of rum, 15%, until we get to the top.
Just start running, Lloyd. You might think it ain't you.
I think you might have
Okay.
to stop it, mate.
Now, when all that was done, of course, see how good you are. What do you think we get when you mix all those together? Let me hear you all at once.
Explode!
There we go. We'll stir it up, of course. Paddy said, here's to you, so you'd have a sip. Woo. That beats that Aunt Lloyd. I reckon you have 2 or 3 of them, you get very frisky. You go home and chase mum around the table or cat or do something. A few more after that, of course, you want to fight everybody. Who remembers Jimmy Turner that night there? Oh, hit me. Guess what? And then, of course, after that, you have a few more, you get legless. And I think if you have a few more after that, you lapse into unconsciousness. So, there you go. But that's a Yagon cocktail, and dear old Paddy would offer that to you after hard mornings fishing on the way back to Tortilla.
Well done, Michael. Well done.
Let's come back to the book now. What does the book contain? You haven't seen it yet, but I have. It's a collection of about over 100 stories that Calibers has compiled over the years from 1963 onwards. It also comprises the back cover, and make sure you look at that. There's a DVD that he's produced of all the photos he's put together, gathered together with commentary and captions and music. It's a wonderful DVD. The stories in this book cover a lot of people, and I apologise if I don't mention everybody. But I've got some of them here, and I just want to hold them up, just to mention some of them to you. He's not here today, but Sharpie was one, that's John Sharp. Yeah, where's me helper? You can pass it to me one at a time. Blackie's here today somewhere, sitting over there.
good night, the old red rooster.
There's a story about Paddy himself, Paddy Coleman, of course. There's stories about Pierre. Pete,
Yes,
around here
yes,
somewhere.
Petey.
Yeah, he's another story in its own.
Thanks, Mike.
Dear old Crispy, not with us today, but dear, lovely to see you, Ben. Crispy.
Solid.
Mal Davis, Jan's here today, family. How are you, Jan?
Yeah.
Oh, Mal. I noticed that we were talking this morning when putting these up, and Mal's name came up in question. And Ian Stockbridge is here, of course, from Western Australia, and I said to Ian, gee, you remember the time about your mum, Nance? He said, yeah, I know, well. I said, yeah. He said to Mal one day, he said, listen, Mal, you know, that's not water. He said, thank Christ for that, Mal. Nance, thank Christ for that, Nance. I'll have 2 fingers, please. Bridge, Rhonda and Leslie are here. We all know Pa, wonderful fellow. Sid, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
I Well, you don't know where he is there. Diver. Yeah, I bet you don't know who Diver is. Some of you do. Some of you do. God, he's a legend in his own right. More not commonly known as Bazza, probably, or Baz. Ask him one time when he woke up, he had his finger stuck up a tap, and he doesn't know how it got there.
Well, that could have got ugly.
I mentioned Ian Stockbridge a moment ago. Who forgets Stocky, eh? Good old Stocky.
Train driver.
Well done. Another story about him and his 4 feet, but that's another story. It's in the book. It's in the book. It's in the book.
He knows about the book too.
Some of you won't know him. He's a gentle giant, wonderful fellow.
You're in
Very
big
often
trouble.
throws kegs around when they're empty.
Lift the engines
Pulled
too.
the Sydney showground out of shape in a tug-of-war team one day. This is a new one. You know, this bloke is Dark Cloud. He's not here today to defend himself. Dick Sarkis. Girlies will remember him, many of you will remember him. I ain't working with that later.
Lotto. That's the one. Yeah, colour balls.
Evan Griffin, wonderful fellow. This is not a lot of them, of course. Our Crouch and ours are great Crouch. The guy decided that it was apt to call the hut Tortilla Flat. So I mentioned some of those. There are a lot of schoolies here today, and that's great because one of the times that they enjoyed up there was at the end of the year to unwind, they'd all go to Yagon. A lot of those guys are here today, very quickly, besides Calipers and Mr. Walken Pete. There's Blackie, there's Al Wicker, there's myself, there's Morrow from Dubbo. Good to see him. Here's the bloke that's got the sign hanging on front of him. Don't touch that effing generator. That's another story. Rick Parsons, I think, is here. Bobby Taylor, Steve Purden. Emil, good to see Emil, wonderful. Gillo's here. Trevor Smith's here. And I've missed somebody, I apologise. All the schoolies here, they had a wonderful time. You know, I think back in those times when we met there at Christmas time, we had wonderful times playing cricket on the beach. Jackie, stop laughing. Hit it to me, hit it to me. Yeah, with the sing songs around the table at night time. You know, boys, I brought her along today. You might get a rendition of the 12 Days of Christmas later.
Poor little Angeline.
Old Smokey. And a couple of those Yagon. Or even my grandfather's clock. We won't rush into that.
He's done well. He's done well. Oh, yes.
Besides schoolies, of course, not forgetting it's a fishing village and there was a lot of huts there, 65. We mustn't forget that it was a place for families, and the families are here today. The children, they're all adults now, and the grandchildren, both from Sark, Mr. Wog and Calipers and Tiny, and many, many, many other people who took their families up there and had wonderful times at Yagon. What else does the book contain in it besides those stories? It contains stories about fishing and how fishing evolved, and I've just put out a few in front here to remind the guys of what it was like in those days. All overhead reels. On the end here we've got bobby corking, which was bloody side ears in Pelton spinners all the time. We used to use garfish or beakies in the beginning. I don't know what happened there, he sort of kicked over a bit. Anyway,
Got him on bloody back to front.
that'll be right. Then came the days of the spinners, of course, chrome spinners, but of course Calipers and all those boys used to make their own to start with spinners. And then right at the very end you've got your pilchards we used to pelt out there. And of course, when you get into jagging mullet to use those homemade jags, that was hard work. They're supposed to represent
bloody.
you know, the kind of fishing that was done. Besides that, of course, you fish for tail naturally, was the main thing, but there are other fish that you caught. I won't go into that. Fishing spots, people who went there remember places like, well, the favourite, of course, was Sawtooth in the bay or off the point. When you get the book, people, you'll find that one of the first photographs is two guys right out to the end of Sawtooth, Tiny and Mr. Wog. With the same bloody hat on he got on there, I think. Yeah. Out there spinning for Taylor. And then, of course, you had shag shit, you had first point, you had treachery, and you had the skillion, and you had the beach itself, and the gibbers. Favourite spots for fishing that people had wonderful times in. And then, of course, the book itself covers stories about the fight for Yagon. Lloyd's already presented George with a gift to thank him for his efforts he made in trying to save Yagon. And it's quite sad, actually, when you think about it, but bureaucracy in the end, you know, 9 times out of 10 usually wins. The story also, the story... trouble. In the back of the book you'll find some Yagon sayings, which are wonderful sayings, and they emanated from Yagon, written and spoken by lots of people. I'm not going to spoil it by mentioning some of them, but they're there, and you'll enjoy them. And the thing that I think I found most interesting in the book, besides the stories that Lloyd had written, is allowed for the younger, they're not young now, they're adults, but the kids at the time, or they were kids at the time, have now grown up and they've written their memories and recollections of Yagon. And I refer to Peter Horn and Catherine and Steve and Scott. I've missed anyone else, I'm sorry. Paul, was it? Paul, no, I think Paul, I'm not sure. Anyway, and there's even stories there from Barb Gow and Margaret Crockett about the women's side of it, I guess, and it's an interesting story to say. So when you read those recollections, the kids today, you know, think back, or they think back to those days, and they had wonderful times, wonderful experiences. And so the book itself, you know, covers all that sort of thing. You'll have a wonderful read. And of course, don't forget the DVD. I must at this stage, in getting close to finishing, a book just doesn't appear on its own. You've got to have somebody to write the stories which Calibus has done. You've got to have somebody who says to him one time, Dad, you're going to have to do something with them and put them into a book. Now the bloke who I acknowledge, and I know Lloyd will acknowledge, and Mark, is Scott, his son Scott. He's there somewhere. Oh, there he is, behind the camera again. He's the one, and I'm sure I'm not embarrassing by saying that he was the driving force that got this thing off the ground. He was the chief editor, whatever you want to call it. He was a hard day. He did a wonderful job in producing and helping, well, mainly producing with the help of a lot of other people. But besides that, Scott was at the helm. And below that, you've got people who did the typing. You've got people who did the proofreading. You've got people who provided the photos, and people who wrote things in the book. Blackie wrote about Lloyd. Bill wrote the introduction. And there are lots of things contributed by people. And I've already mentioned the recollections from Scott, Steve and others. So we owe a debt of gratitude to those people for doing that. What can I say about the author? Well, besides being a great mate, I've got to refer to something that was written by Blackie. I'm sure he won't mind if I just steal it for a moment. He wrote about the author. That's the last little bit. And he says something, Lloyd Crockett, like a ball of string, is always ready to unwind. How true that is. How true that is. Blackie's thoughts, I think, talk about Lloyd's brief history right through fishing when he first started fishing. But considering what he's been through all these years, or over the last 4 or 5 years, I suppose, he's still got that energy, he's still got that drive, and it's wonderful. Who will remember his 50th year bash? Remember that over at Rosebrook Road? You know, camping, I went the whole weekend. Bob Curran made an appearance that day too, if I remember right. Yeah. And now he's got his 70. You know, I really look forward to the 90th. I can picture it now. It'll be in a nursing home somewhere.
Tea garden.
And it'll be near a beach.
Yeah.
It'll be near a beach. And he'll be visited by great-grandchildren. probably crawl up on his knee and say, Grandpa, tell me about Yagon. What is speaking of being what did you do at Yagon?
What did do?
At this stage, Calipers also, there are a lot of blokes who are not here with us today, and with all due respect, I don't want to upset anybody, but if I just quickly read through people who I know are looking down on us today, Sark and Stocky and Sid, Ray Crouch, Harbridge and Mal, and Christy and Paddy, Big Malcolm and Ripper, and there are probably others, and I apologise if I missed them. I've got a feeling, mate, that they're up there looking down today, probably saying, looking down and saying, well done, Calipers, good on you. The last photograph in the book, I think, epitomises the affinity that Lloyd's had with aviation and fishing generally over the years. And it's a photograph of him on the beach with one of his grandchildren. And to me, it sort of, as I said, epitomises his life, his love of his grandchildren.
He's up a tree somewhere.
And his affinity with what he's done.
It's gone.
And the legacy that he'd like to leave to those grandchildren. It's a wonderful photograph. I'm sure you'll agree when you see it. Well, look, folks, that's getting pretty close to the end. I better start getting on to what I'm supposed to be doing here now. The book itself, can I just give you a couple of recommendations? You get it. Make sure you flip through it, which you will, and you'll see something, you'll have a yarn to somebody about it and say, oh, God, you remember that? Oh, I don't want to forget that one. But when you do that, and you get home sometime down the track, just get a quiet moment on yourself. Sit down and read through it from cover to the end. Look at the DVD. Wonderful DVD. Either you look at the DVD first, or you read the book. Doesn't matter. Take the time on your own. All the emotions in the world will come through. You'll be sad, happy, you'll be laughing. It's amazing to cry. Yagon Cocktails I think it's probably time for me to say to you that on your behalf of those who are not with us today, I'd like to now officially launch the book Yagon Cocktails. I only have one final thing to show before I go. If I offend anybody, too bad. Yes!
Brilliant.
Well done, mate. Brilliant.
Forgot that.
You forgot that? Another one, Becky!
Up the old red rooster and more.
Oh dear.
Proud moment, Lloyd.
Oh, buddy, you did a good job, didn't you? Oh, you did a good job. No. No more teeth. Are you going to cut the cake, Lloyd?
I'm going to cut the cake, and I thank Deanna for organising this. And for anybody who wants a photo of this cake, it's really worthwhile. It's got Mr. Wong, wherever you are, you want to get a photo of the title.
Yeah. Oh, that came out good, didn't it? That came out brilliantly.
Oh, it's just brilliant.
Where's Mom?
Mate, there were two people in the cake shop yesterday, and there were a young couple picking a wedding cake, and they had a look at it. They said, how excellent is that?
Can you see that? No, it was a great gift.
Righto, mate, you've got, that's the title page, Yagon Cocktails, Yagon Stories, 1963 to 1988, Lloyd Calipers Crockett. Then there's Mr. Wong,
Tiny, put your head up.
Your head up, guys.
Odd sawtooth with bloody metal spinners fitted up the gutter.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. And that is the front page of the book. You could not have picked a better bloody picture. Both typified Scott, it was Scott's choice, and what a fabulous photo.
Fantastic.
1965.
Scott. Good choice, Scott.
1965.
Was it Scott or was it D?
This is the photo.
Look up here, mate.
Look at these are the
You got bloody
original.
NBNs here, mate, ready to take a photo of it.
Nice. Very good.
Well, chop the heads off. Hang on, can I get my... Sorry, can I chop out of the way? You've got the wrong one. Yeah. Clayton. That's it. Look at him. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
That's what it was.
G'day, mate. Heard lots about you from him, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. We go back a bit.
Yeah. Actually,
It's a lovely day.
it is. He deserves it, mate. So nothing.
Pleasure.